children, I am Mushkeen, your English teacher, and I welcome all of you to this session. Children, today, the session of today is going to be different, much different from the previous ones. And the reason is that today, the prose that we are going to discuss is quite different from the previous ones. This is not a usual prose, children. What is this? This is a description of a person. And what do we call a description of a person which is based on facts, children? Yes, the chapter under discussion today is a factual description of a baker. Baker, children, baker. When we hear the name baker, we think, okay, this is not that important. This profession is not that important. Who is a baker? This baker doesn't need any importance. But children, when we look around us, when we try to observe our society, what we see that there are different stratas in our society, different levels at which the society works, children. And you know, it requires blue collars as much as it needs the white collars. Children, I give you two terms, blue collars and white collars. These actually are phrases, these are terms that are used for white collar, for the salaried professionals, employees. We call them white collars or white collar job. And then we have blue collar job or blue collars. These are simply the industrial workers or these people who do not have who are not professionals and who do not have these they are not salaried employees actually. So we call them blue collars or blue collar job doing people. So we in our society have white collar job people and blue collar job people. And both of these categories are very, very important for a society to function. And baker, as we have our prose today, our chapter today, the title is A Baker from Goa. Children, a baker from Goa. But we can actually relate it to our own societies because there are some things that are quite similar in importance to Goa and to every other society with regard to this baker. A baker from Goa, as I already told you, is a factual description, and this description has been written by Lucio Rodriguez. And Lucio Rodriguez is the narrator of this description. He is from Goa and he goes down the memory lane and is reminded of the baker when he was a child. And he actually reminds his childhood days. Now he is a grown-up person and now he has realized the importance of a baker in a society, and that is how now he explains it, that what we used to do as a child and how important this baker was in a Goan society, in Goan culture. Now, how he starts, he says that in his childhood days, this baker in Goa, he would wake people up and he would go to people selling his bread in basket, and this basket he would carry it on his head and then hold it with one hand, his left hand, and in his right hand he had a staff which he would bang on the floor, and it would have some peculiar sound that would actually announce the arrival of this baker. So this baker in Goa, he was called as Pader, P-A-D-E-R. P-A-D-E-R, pader children. What do we call our bakers here in Kashmir? What do we call them? Do you remember? Can you recall it? Absolutely. We call them kandur. So bakers, they are vital to every society. Now children, from here onwards, we will try to relate it to our culture, to our society as well. So he says that this pader would come to our place, to our house, holding his basket on his head with a staff in his right hand and then banging it on the floor. And what sound would his staff make? It would make a sound quite similar to jang, jang. So this jang, jang would announce the coming of the baker to a place, to a house. And then who would collect the bread from this baker? It was the housemaid. He says that in our family, at our house, what happened when this baker would come with bread in his basket and then doing that jang, jang sound with his staff, we would all wake up with his sound and that smell of that fresh bread. It would spread all over and it would make us salivate, and we would all jump out of our beds and rush to the baker to actually look into his basket for our favorite bread. And we would not be allowed to touch his basket, but then we would never obey our elders, and we would often go and look into the basket of the baker. And then this housemaid of ours, he doesn't remember the correct name. What was she called? She was called Pasquine or Bastine. So he says, when he says Pasquine or Bastine, we get it that he does not remember it clearly what she was called. So this housemaid would go and she would collect the bread from the baker. And these children, they would also devour that bread, sweet, fresh and fragrant bread. And he says that we would often do it without brushing our teeth. He uses a beautiful sentence there. He says, have you ever seen a tiger brushing his teeth before eating his prey? So same was the case with us. We would not brush our teeth. We never found it mandatory. We would go and then munch on the bread, and we would believe that having the tea, hot tea with the bread, it would clean our mouths automatically. Then he gives this importance of this baker in his society, in Goan culture. What he says is that this baker, he was an important pillar of this society, of Goan culture, of Goan society. Why? Because no marriage festival, no marriage occasion was ever celebrated without baker. Why? Because a type of bread was very, very important, and it was considered a mandatory item in marriages. And this, who would make this? It was the baker. And what was this item? It was bowl, B-O-L. So this was a type of bread that was mandatory for marriage ceremonies. So without a baker, no bowl would be there, and when there would be no bowl, no marriages would be there. Then he says, even when there were these engagement ceremonies of the daughters, mothers, they had to prepare those sandwiches. But then when it was marriage, it was important that the baker should bake bowl for these auspicious occasions. Then only their marriages were complete. Then he says cakes and bolinas. These were important for other festivities, for other functions. Children, let's take our own example. You celebrate birthdays, we celebrate birthdays. Do you think these celebrations, birthday celebrations, they would be possible without cakes? Absolutely, children. And who bakes cakes? It's a baker, isn't it? And then, do you think your morning tea, be it the sweet tea or the salt tea, do you think you would enjoy it without the bread? Again, importance of the baker. And then there are other occasions, children. You have sandwiches, you come to school, you go to kitchen, and you want to have a good feast for brunch. And what do you have at kitchen usually? It's a burger. And do you think a burger is possible without a bun? Not at all. And who bakes bun? It is the baker, children. There are other festivities, isn't it? In our marriage ceremonies, children, what do you think? When we have these huge ceremonies, do you think that we do not use any kind of bakery? We use. And who bakes it? It is the baker. As I already told you, baker in Goa was known as peda. And here we call them as kandur, isn't it? And this peda was important to the Goan society and Goan culture. In the same way, the kandur is important for us. Then he says that these cakes and bolognese, they would be baked for other festivities. Children, what is important is that your attire, the way you wear yourself, it speaks volumes about your profession. He says that this baker in Goa, he had this peculiar dress, which was peculiar, and even nowadays, if a person wears dress which actually resembles with the dress of the peda, he is called a peda. Now, what was this dress of peda? Peda, children, he wore a long frock, and it was long up to the knees, and they would wear those short pants, and then again they had that staff in their hand. Long frock up to the knees and then short pants, and this was peculiar to the baker of Goa. The dress was worn by the baker of Goa. And he says that this dress, we call it kabai. What was the dress called? K-A-B-A-I, kabai, children. Here we don't have actually a particular dress for our bakers. They wear same dresses as we wear. But then when they are baking the bread, you know, it's flour all over, they are white, their hands are white. That's how we can actually get it. Okay, he is actually a baker. Otherwise, it's very difficult for us to recognize a baker in a group of people if he is not baking. But in Goan culture, in Goan society, a baker would be identified by his dress. And what was the dress called, children? It was kabai. He says that even now it happens that bakers, they are very, very important, though the profession is not considered that important. But father was a baker, and this profession in Goan culture was continued by the son of the baker. So they would continue with the same profession, generation after generation after generation. Then he says that this baker, he would come to collect his bills and clear them at the end of every month. He would note them down with a pencil on his diary, you can say, on his notebook, and then he would clear all the bills. He would say, see, this much is your cost, and we would pay him. So he would keep a note of the bills. What does it say, children? It says that the baker, it's not necessary that the baker would have been an illiterate person. So, if I am a baker and I am able to note down the bills, children, I should have that reason, that much of sense, so that I will be able to go for mathematical calculations. Right, children? Then he says that this baker, please don't think that this baker would be poor. They would earn a lot. And how would we actually guess it that their profession was a profitable profession? Why? Because these bakers, they would obviously be plump. You understand, children? Plump. They won't be skinny. They would be plump. And who is plump? Who eats enough, isn't it? Proteins, fats, carbohydrates, other things. So if he was not starved, he wouldn't starve. Who starves? Who doesn't have enough money to suffice his meals, his needs, his nutrition, right? He was not suffering from malnutrition, children. So he was plump, and it would speak volumes that the bakers in Goa, in Goan culture, they would earn huge profits. So children, this factual description, it is actually a simple description about Peda, baker in Goa, his importance in the Goan culture. But we can relate it to our society, our own culture, that no single morning can be complete without the baker in our society. Why? Because we need bread. Not only in mornings, every time we have snacks even, isn't it? So bakers, they are an important part of a society and they are vital for its functioning. I hope, children, I'm clear, and see you next time. Thank you very much.